and this is the Nonprofit Corner Podcast with your host, Dr. Victoria Boyd. And welcome to the Nonprofit Corner Podcast. This is your host, Dr. Victoria Boyd. And guess what? I have Stan Shields on here with me today as our guest. And he's going to be talking about something that a lot of us have sort of thought has gone out of style, but for nonprofits, it's really still a very viable and solid strategy. But before we get into those tips and strategies, Stan, welcome to the Nonprofit Corner Podcast. As I ask most of my guests, what led you to be where you are today?
Well, first, thank you for inviting me. I appreciate the opportunity to be on here with you because you are just amazing. So I love doing any of these kinds of things with you. What got me on this projection or where I am? It's interesting. I've had a long career, obviously, looking at all this gray, right? But I've had a long career, but prior to this, I spent 15 years as a brick and mortar business owner. And towards the end of that, I decided that I really didn't want to continue with a brick and mortar business. I wanted a business that offered more versatility of me being able to travel and be in different places and operate from wherever I am. And so I really started doing a lot more on the digital side, and I had started doing more of that while I was with my brick and mortar business. And then 7 years ago, moved to Las Vegas, Nevada, and started really operating more digitally than the brick and mortar side. And so it's just kind of evolved, right? From that whole brick and mortar, I eventually started doing some digital while I had the brick and mortar, and now moved more to the digital side.
And so we're talking, a lot of what we're talking about, even though your brick and mortar, it was a martial arts facility and you serve the community. But a lot of what we're going to talk about and what you've really sort of shifted to when we're talking digital is in the marketing realm, because I talk a lot about marketing, especially to the nonprofit sector, because many of them think their first challenge is fundraising, but it's actually marketing. And if they have a solid marketing plan, then that fundraising will come much more easily. So it's I call it the peanut butter and jelly sandwich type effect, that you got to have one to really make the other stand out or be great. Well, some people might say peanut butter and bananas, but I'm a peanut butter and jelly person. So anyway.
Me too.
Okay, so we'll stick with peanut butter and jelly. But it's been interesting listening to some of your concepts and the strategies, because you've helped me out tremendously in getting just the systems. I still don't understand them. I'm going to admit that. But at least I can function at a third grade level in getting them running. And I understand, first of all, the need for them. So before we really get into what we're going to be talking about, which is direct mail, let's talk a little bit about the need of automation, especially from the nonprofit perspective.
Well, there's several points I want to make with that. One of them that you talked about in terms of systems and marketing being the real need versus what people think it is, right? And I'll go back to a martial arts analogy for just a quick second here. Is one of the goals is to build black belts, build those higher rank students, right? The core, the most important element in building a big student base with lots of black belts and all that is you got to have lots of white belts coming through the door. The white belts are the key, because the more white belts you get that are super excited and everything else, it fuels everything else. Well, the marketing, regardless of what kind of organization you are, the marketing is what really is going to fuel everything else as it goes along, right? And so if to the extent that you can take those marketing efforts and if you can automate them, then it's going to make the organization so much more efficient, number one. And it also reduces the need for employees or volunteers, all of that, right? The more that you can automate, the fewer human bodies that you need to do some of the things that you do, but also it eliminates mistakes. It eliminates problems, some of those problems that you have. So automation is huge.
Yeah, and I'm going to touch on one point you just made. It eliminates the need for humans. Let's have a mindset shift. We can take that human value and shift it more towards your programs, your mission, versus just trying to get the operations part of the organization done. If all of those things are in a system and automated and you know they're running well, all of those hours that staff generally would sit there trying to input names and send out emails and all of that,
slap labels on cards or envelopes and all of that stuff,
you know, can be devoted to really enhancing the program. So I'm looking at it as it's also having impact in the community by making your organization have a more powerful impact in the community. So, I mean, it's a domino effect. You know, you get one thing working well, it impacts all of the other things. So great analogy too, you know, the white belts, you know, those people in business terms. And I keep telling my nonprofits, you're a for-purpose business. It's the funnel. It's that funnel where you need a lot of people coming in the top so that you can guide them through that customer journey. And we're still calling them customers, even though you're probably thinking of them as donors. They're still your target audience. And so this is a strategy that really will help get all of your white belts into at least awareness of who you are. And that's key. It's that first level of awareness. Now, some training that I did later, and we're going to talk about that a little bit more, but let's talk a little bit more about this automation stuff. Okay. You know, I sort of hate, no, I won't say hate's a strong word. I'm intimidated by it. And I think a lot of people are intimidated by it. Why do you think we're so intimidated by just this?
You know, it's interesting. And I agree with you. I think a lot of people are intimidated by it. But truly, let's face it, we all have our strengths and our skills that we're really good at. And we have those other things that we're not necessarily really good at. Right. Yeah. And our brains work certain ways and whatnot. And so mine tends to, from an automation standpoint, I mean, that stuff just kind of falls in place for me. Right. But what's crazy about that, though, is that we have to recognize where our true strengths are and where they are not. And the best thing to do is to play to your strengths and hire for your weaknesses, right?
Absolutely.
Go outside to hire and bring in others who have strengths in the areas that you don't have those strengths, right?
And so you build your team.
Yeah. And so that's where the whole team thing comes in and complement, you know, you want to build a complementary team. So it just is. I mean, it's not, I don't know that there's any magic to it. It's just, we all just think differently and whatnot, but it is intimidating, and it can chew up a bunch of time for people trying to do the things that they're just not good at. Right. Yeah. So,
and I want to bring up a point that we talked about the other day, because we sort of have regular meetings, and it was the whole fact of, it's not that the product or the tool is not working.
Right.
It's that the person working it isn't working.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's, you know, and the more intimidating that it is, the more that people tend to put it off, and they just don't do it because they think it's going to take a really long time. And I'll tell you, here's another little funny story. Okay. Because I'm very mechanically inclined for the most part, right? I'll amaze myself and I'll amaze people. I used to work on my cars when I was a kid, right? All of that. But what's funny is I bought a new office chair and it's in a box. And I opened the box and I started looking at the instructions for putting it together. And I went, oh crap, this is going to take a long time. I closed the box back up and shoved it back in the corner, right? so we'll put off those things that look like they're going to be difficult. They're going to take a long time. We'll put those things off, right?
Yes.
Software is no different. People do the exact same thing because it's all got to be set up and you've got to make it do what you want it to do and all of that stuff, right?
So this is a tip for my nonprofit listeners. You may invest on the front end, but the back end payout or return on investment is so great. And that return on investment, and when I say invest on the front end, whether it's the time or staff you tell to devote their time, because that's still a budget line, that's still time and money, or you actually create a budget to have an expert do it, because the problem with telling a staff person, they're going from ground zero too. They have no knowledge of it either. So it's hit or miss whether or not they're doing the most strategic setup of it, using the tool to its maximum ability, or investing in someone that actually knows how to use it.
Yep.
Because and this, telling stories again, I spent hours trying to set up some of these back end things. That's why I said, it intimidates me. And you explained it in less than 2 minutes, what step I had skipped. And I had been on it for maybe 3 or 4 hours trying to get something to work. And all of that time could have been saved.
Yeah.
If I had just known that one little detail, and many times it's just clicking a simple tab or a button or something, knowing where to find something. And so the value, and I'm stressing that to all of these leaders out here, you really should consider investing in services to help you that are not your expertise. And you can read the data, the research, everything says get an expert to do things that's not your bailiwick, or you're stay in your lane, as they say. Right. Okay, we're going to come back in just a few minutes to talk about the tool that really will bring some value to our nonprofits. We will be right back with the Nonprofit Corner podcast. Training every second Wednesday. Find it at nonprofitcorner.org. Okay, and we are back with the Nonprofit Corner podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Victoria Boyd, and our special guest, Stan Shields. And what we're going to talk about now, like I said in the intro, many people have sort of pushed this form of marketing to the side. It could be considered old school. But with everything that has evolved, it too has evolved in terms of how it's done, its effectiveness, and its efficiency. And I'm talking about direct mail. And some people, I don't have a big enough database for that. But it's not all about sending out initial communication. It's because I talk a lot about retention of donors and things like that. It is a great tool to personalize and build a strong relationship with it. So let's talk about just some statistics or the effects of direct mail, because you know about it.
Let me give you, before we dive into maybe some of those, let's talk about who is currently or who is still using direct mail, because I think this is important, right? I went to look up and see who are the biggest users of direct mail. And the American Red Cross is one of the biggest users. World Wildlife Fund, the Susan G. Komen for the Cure, the Feeding America, United Way, AARP. Any of us over 55, we're getting stuff from them.
I don't know what you're talking about.
We're getting stuff from them all the time, right?
Every week.
All the time. And so, and then of course, think about right around Thanksgiving, you always get these little labels in an envelope for you to donate and help feed Thanksgiving for somebody. And they give you some labels to go on your envelopes and that kind of stuff. That stuff is still all there. It hasn't gone away. One of the big fears, I think, for a lot of organizations, they think about direct mail and they think they need a massive budget to be able to do that, right? But there are, as you alluded to, there are systems and tools out there that will allow them to start small and work their way up, as well as starting with being able to use it in a way that's not necessarily going out to prospect or to generate new donors from that, but to use it to strengthen the current relationships that you have, right?
Yes.
That those systems will allow to do that. And so there's a couple of stats out here that I think you liked. One of them is that direct mail has a higher response rate than email. And the average response rate for direct mail is 9% compared to 1% for email, right?
Yeah. And we're not saying don't use email, it's just response rate. And I think about when I get something here, I don't always open my mail on the first day.
Right.
Or the second day.
I don't want to admit that, but I hear you.
Yeah. And so its shelf life in terms of, I'll say, sitting around.
That's right.
Is much longer.
Yep.
And if it catches my attention, it gets put into look at this again pile.
Yeah. And it may go on the refrigerator. There's a, you know, so that it's visible all the time. So there's,
right. So
there's different advantages.
We're of that boomer age. We know we prefer tactile. We like to touch and feel stuff a little bit more, but we also use that email. But emails tend, the chance of emails being deleted without even being opened is like very quick. And once it's gone, it's gone.
Yep.
You know?
So it's fast. I mean, it's funny. The other thing, and this second statistic speaks to what you just said, but direct mail is more memorable than digital marketing, right? And says, what does it say? According to the Royal Mail Market Reach, direct mail is 49% more memorable than email, right?
And I think a lot of that is because it has our name on it.
Yeah, it does.
You know, it's addressed to us.
Well, and that speaks to the very next stat, which says that the open rates are as high as 100%. Because if it comes to us, it's got our name on it. And especially if it's a lumpy mail kind of a package or something like that, now it piques the curiosity.
Tell people what lumpy mail is. Tell people what lumpy mail is.
So lumpy mail is a term that was coined years ago. I don't even know how many years ago, but it was made famous by a guy named Chet Holmes that would send a package to an executive, but the package would have a small gift inside of it. So that means that when they get this package, if it's a box, first of all, you're curious. You want to know who sent you a thing, right? So a box is a great way to send stuff like that. But if you send a package that's flexible and it's lumpy, there's something inside of it, it makes you go, well, wait a minute, what is it that's in here?
What's in it?
Right? I don't know if you remember this. Back in the day, car dealerships used to do that. They would put a key inside this envelope.
A lot of them still do that. A lot of them still do. Like, and also like promotional companies, they'll put a pin in there.
Yes.
You know, with your name on it.
With your name on it.
That's cool. So I should order 1,000 of those.
And as a martial arts school owner, they got me numerous times because they would send a pin and it had my martial arts school name on it and sometimes my name on it and everything. And if it was a really cool, nice looking pin, I'm like, oh yeah, we can use a bunch of these. We had an event coming up or whatever that we would order a bunch of them and give those away because those are great little gifts when you're doing a live event.
And that's where you're sending branding home. You're spreading your branding. Yep. You know, you never know where that's going to end up in terms of whose hand it's going to end up. So nonprofits, lumpy mails are those packages that are lumpy, you know. So and it's fun to get those. It's really fun to get those.
They really are, because we all like gifts, right?
Yeah.
We like getting stuff, and then the curiosity gets us, right? Like, what's in this thing? So.
Absolutely. So let's now dive into direct mail and some of the benefits or ways to use it for nonprofits.
You know, there's a few things that I think nonprofits can really benefit from using it without necessarily breaking the bank and really starting to learn how to do it. One key way is sending thank you notes.
Absolutely.
Right? So as soon as somebody makes a donation or somehow contributes to the organization, if you have that system set up and automated, that you add them to the database and now it will send them a thank you note. And I'll give you an example of this. It's not a thank you note, but it's a nice to meet you note. Recently went to a networking event, and before I went, I set up my system so that when I get there, I meet someone, I get their card, I can put their info into my system, and I just tag it with a little code, and then the system automatically kicks out an email that goes to them, so that now I didn't really have to stop and write that email.
Yep.
The system, it's already in there. The system sent it, and the system said to them, keep an eye out in your mail because you'll be getting something in the mail, because the system automatically triggered a nice to meet you card so that they get a physical card now that's actually mailed to their address that now is a nice to meet you. And then the system will do many other things for me, like now remind me to follow up with them on a certain date. And I can send other holiday special items I want to send to them, that those are all pre-programmed in, so that once I launch that system, it now starts to do it. That would work wonderful with nonprofits as well, so that they continue the conversation, right? Invite people to connect to your Facebook page, to your...
Absolutely. All of these are strategies that I talked about when I presented what is called the Super Donor Framework Challenge a couple of weeks back, a training on how to build donors retention and attraction. And a lot of it was the communication. And I talked in those channels. One of the big ones I talked about was that direct mail, because even sending a postcard of just saying, okay, thank you, did you know our next event, and it doesn't have to be a fundraising event. Let me stress that. It could just be, because you're a special donor, come to a rehearsal of whatever, come view this program. It could be a way to just get them engaged. And you mentioned, go visit our Facebook page, go join the community. It could be the next level of stewardship, building them, drawing them in.
So what you just said was number 3 on my list, which was invite them to events, right? But those events can be any events. They don't have to be just the donor events or fundraising events. They can be any kind of events that just keeps people engaged and whatnot. And the second thing I had on my list was newsletters, right? To be able to send out newsletters so that you could, and it kind of just depends on your base, who the people are, right? Do you have the kind of people that want it digital because they want to read it on their phone? Or do you have some of those people that want to sit on the porch with a cup of coffee and read the newsletter, right? Have this thing in their hand, right? And do that. That's another option, right? That they get for being able to do that, okay? But another way that is a biggie that companies will use, but this can work for nonprofits as well. Let's suppose that you have a short list of, I'm going to say VIP donors for lack of a better terminology or whatever.
Legacy donors, or those major donors.
Those major donors, right? So you got a short list of those people, and maybe what you do is you send something that comes in a box, and it could be something as simple as a cell phone stand like this. This holds my cell phone, right? Sits right on my desk right here in front, right? Boom, something like that. Or and then you can do some other little things like cookies and brownies and whatever, those things. All of those things are things that are not meant to buy them, but to impress them with remembering who you are. And so that then when you call on them to try and get a conversation with them, you're not just another person calling them. Now you stick out in their mind.
Absolutely.
Right?
And donors want three things: appreciation, recognition, and communication.
Mm-hmm.
And getting small gifts, like you said, even if it's just a brownie.
Right.
It's just the thought, they say, it's not the gift, it's the thought behind it, that's truly showing appreciation and recognition that, because they're thinking, oh, they took the time to send me, they don't know it's all automated and set up.
That's right.
in a system. But
so if you do things like that, when you've got a very targeted list of people that you're really trying to connect with and communicate with, what better way to make sure that that happens than by having it automated, right? Yep. So you launch the automation, and now the first thing goes, and then the next thing goes, and then the next thing goes, until you've accomplished the goal, and then you remove those people from that automation and you put them in a thank you automation, right? So
and I mentioned the touch point theory, where during the year you need to have it. They say 10, I say minimum 12, because there's 12 months in a year. But you have statistics that say it takes between 5 and 20 touch points.
Yeah, and I think that number is even higher than that at this point, right? So, but let's take that whole touch point concept and let's put it on steroids. Let me show you what I mean. So by using automation, we could say, I'm going to reach out and connect with this person, and every time I make a phone call to them, that's a touch point, right? I've connected with them. But if I'm always calling the person, they kind of get annoyed or whatever, right? But what if I'm calling? What if I connect on social media? What if I connect by email? What if I connect by direct mail? What if I visit and have a conversation? What if I can put something on their Google My Business page? I mean, so now what you want to do is expand those touch points to all multimedia points.
To all the channels.
Channels,
right? In your communication plan.
That's right.
There's like
that's right.
12 of them,
That is right. So that now there's multiple touch points, and they look around and they go, man, these guys are everywhere, right? This organization,
they must be doing something.
They must be doing something, right? So yes.
So, and that's the impression. That's why I said those touch points are important, and they can't be touch points of always asking. You can't come from a point or a narrative of scarcity, but from thriving. So you don't want to be surviving, you want to be thriving. And that's why multiple communications that are not asking for a solicitation are so important. And a lot of these strategies can do that. So what do you use for your direct mail? That's why we're talking all of this.
I use a system called MailBox Power. And MailBox Power, in fact, I've got a special link that your people can actually try it out for about 40% off if they want to.
I will put it, make sure that it's scrolling underneath here as they.
Okay. And so, but MailBox Power is a company that's been around for about 6 years now, I believe. And they truly have this system, this stuff automated in such a way that it just makes it a no-brainer for organizations. And the price points are, the regular pricing is $79 a month or $199 per month. So they're very affordable, right?
So for 79, just, so they really understand, for 70, how many postcards could they send out for 79? And sort of what does that look like?
They could send an unlimited number of 4x6 postcards. The only thing they're going to have to pay is the postage, right? But there's
all the cards and the printing,
no distribution. I mean, it just, they put them into this system and they hit the button. It will go to our warehouse in Utah that will print them, get them to the post office for them. They don't have to do anything with it other than design it and print it.
I'm going to have to put together a printing and development of those postcard cost comparisons, where you pay $79 a month for unlimited cards.
Yep.
And you're going to have to cover the postage anyway.
Right. And exactly. So, right. And so and then there's 50 greeting cards that's included in that 79 a month. So the 5x7 greeting cards, your standard.
Yeah, like the birthday cards and stuff.
Like a birthday card, like this kind of a thing, right?
Yeah.
So standard card, there's 50 of those that are included for that.
Nonprofits. Okay, listen to me now. Think how special your donors would feel if on each of their birthday, you sent them a birthday card especially for them.
Bang.
That's
but now let's take that and put it on steroids. Here's
Whoa.
what's really cool. There's already a birthday automation built into the system. So all you have to do is literally choose the card you want to send, and you put the person in it and they're going to get it. But the birthday automation also sends a 1/2 birthday card.
You know what? I've gotten that.
And it says happy half birthday. It surprises most people, which means that it stands out now. They're like, yeah, such and such.
I know exactly who sent it to me. I know to this day, I know exactly who sent me the half birthday card.
That's right. And so what's funny about that is I had a guy say to me, he goes, hey, Stan, I got your half birthday card today. He goes, I didn't even know there was such a thing as a half birthday, right? But it's celebrating them, right? And it is a unique way to do it. Now, some people will include gifts in those, so you can send them a brownie or a cookie or any other gift that's in the catalog of like 1,400 different things that can be sent. You send anything to them on those, right? That gets expensive if you send when you start including.
Well, that's why originally we talked about major donors, because those gifts can be more intricate. But for your everyday, a card is so valuable. I mean, simple. Exactly.
So those there, and there's many other applications, obviously, that we could do with this, but the system it's got a list builder built into it. So if you're looking for people in a certain category, there's a database in there that you can go find those people, right?
Wow.
Right inside this database, and then mail them right through this system. So there's a lot in it. It's very powerful, and there's no limitations. You can only put 1,000 people in it or whatever. It's unlimited. You can put 10,000 people in there if you want to, right?
Wow.
So it's
I really wanted to have you on here because I think a lot of nonprofits really overlook this particular strategy because they have the mindset that it's so difficult. Like we talked about, you got to buy the cards or have them printed, or somebody has to sit there and address them, or get labels and slap them on. This way, because they can personalize some of those postcards. They actually write all the content for the postcard.
Everything is personalized. So when they do a card, they say hi, and there's a merge code that's got the first name field or the full name, whatever they want on there. They can merge the address in. And the address labels are all merged in, so they never have to actually print a label or anything. They just put the data into the database, and everything pulls from the database.
Yeah.
There's 20 extra merge fields. So you could say merge field 1 is going to be whatever this person's contribution level is. Merge 2 is, something about the organization or whatever, right? It's like you can put what you want in those, and all of that data can be merged into any of the mailings.
Wow. So nonprofits, this is a strategy, not only that will help you build your communication plan, it will build relationships, it will show appreciation, recognition, and provide communication that is not always solicitation. Yes, you could use it for a solicitation or annual funding campaign or invite to a fundraising event, but there's so many other ways that you could use it as a viable channel. And I want to say again, do your research. In fact, I'm going to go out and do some research on how much it would cost to just print 1,000 postcards. And I bet it will come in higher than $79 a month. I'm just saying.
I should do that too. So when you do it, tell me what it is, because I don't know.
Okay. So as we're wrapping this up, do you have any last words of advice for nonprofits about whether it's automation, marketing, direct mail? Any final tips that you want to share to the nonprofit sector?
The biggest thing for me, I think, is just what we said earlier, that the marketing automation can be such a big win for all organizations, whether they're a nonprofit, a for-profit, whatever. It could be a big win for them, so that the more that they can look at existing processes and things that a person has to do over and over, any manual, repetitive process, seriously look at automating that. And if you're not sure, then talk to somebody like me that can look at it and say, yeah, okay, that can be automated. This can be automated. It'll save time, money, allow resources to be put to better use.
Absolutely. And one tool that I don't know why some things that are so obvious, like a calendar.
Yes. Calendar automation. Yeah.
So
many people are resistant to that, and it's funny because I think there's a wide range of beliefs associated around all of that. Some of it is, that just seems so snooty. It just, you should just take the time to talk to the person and get on their calendar or do whatever. But think about how much time gets wasted with going back and forth. How about Tuesday? No, Tuesday doesn't work for me. How about Wednesday? Okay, Wednesday. No, I got this happening on Wednesday. You go back and forth forever doing that. Whereas if you just look at the person's calendar and look at your calendar and you go, oh, here's where we both have openings. All right, book it. Done.
Yeah.
And now reminders go automatically so that you don't have to think about that either.
Yeah. And one thing that I want them to think about, even though they might feel that it's impersonal, how many more personal conversations will be booked because of that touch point of in-person,
right.
where you've made things effective. But also, I think it will show that your organization is thinking about being effective and efficient by having some of those tools where they don't have to go through that. But also nonprofits, in terms of what I was speaking about for calendars, your calendar, 12-month calendar is the perfect tool to put a communication plan in. You could drop all of these mailings second week of every month.
That's right. That's right.
Use the simple, obvious tools that are out there.
Yeah.
Okay, Stan Schill, it has been my pleasure to have you on the Nonprofit Corner podcast. As usual, you were dropping those nuggets and strategies and statistics and things that nonprofits can do, not only to make their life more effective, but make their organization more efficient, and it will save them money. Thank you for being on the Nonprofit Corner podcast. This is your host, Dr. Victoria Boyd, and we will see you next time.